Hello and welcome. Today, we're jumping into a really cool concept in cognitive psychology, the working memory model. You know how you can juggle a bunch of different thoughts all at once? Well, this model is the key to understanding how. We're going to see how it completely changed the game, turning our view of short-term memory from just a boring old waiting room into a super active mental workbench.
But first, let me ask you something. Think about this for a sec. You can probably hum your favorite song right now while picturing a friend's face. No problem, right? But what if I asked you to read two different sentences at the exact same time? It's pretty much impossible. So what gives? Why is one task so easy and the other so hard? That's the exact puzzle that the working memory model helps us solve.
And this leads us to a massive shift in how we think about memory. The old way, from the multi-store model, pictured short-term memory as, well, just a single passive box where information would just sit around. But the working memory model comes along and says, no. It's more like a busy workbench, where we're actively grabbing, moving, and using information in real time.
So to really get why the working memory model was such a huge deal, we first need to look at the problem it was trying to fix. The old, simple story of short-term memory, well, it just wasn't holding up anymore. You see, the multi-store model said that short-term memory was just one single thing, a single store. But that idea was way too simple. It just couldn't explain the complex things we do every single day, like, well, humming a tune while picturing a face. The whole idea was starting to fall apart.
And this is where our heroes, Baddeley and Hitch, step onto the scene. Back in 1974, they came up with a much more detailed and, frankly, much more accurate model that tackled all of these problems head-on.
And here it is, the working memory model. The key word here is processor. It's not just holding info, it's actively working on it. The big ideas to grab onto are that it's dynamic, it uses a team of subunits, and it has a boss making all the decisions. It's not a single player, it's a whole team.
All right, so let's pop the hood on this mental workbench and see what's inside. For all you psychology students out there, this next bit is your core AO1 knowledge. Knowing these components is absolutely foundational.
So this diagram is basically the blueprint for our working memory. You can see right at the top, we've got the boss, the central executive, and it's in charge of three, let's call them slave systems, that do all the specialized work: the phonological loop, the Visuo-Spatial Sketchpad, and the Episodic Buffer. So, first up, let's talk about the big boss, the central executive. Now, what's really important to remember is that this part doesn't store any information itself. Nope, its job is to manage the whole show. It directs our attention and decides where to send the mental resources. It's the ultimate decision maker.
A great way to think of it is like the air traffic controller for your brain. It's deciding which thoughts get landing priority and makes sure there are no cognitive collisions. But, and this is a big but, it has a very limited capacity, which is exactly why it needs those other systems to do the heavy lifting.
Next up, we've got the phonological loop. This one is all about sound. It's basically your inner ear and your inner voice. It's broken into two parts: the phonological store, which is like a little tape recorder for words you hear, and the articulatory process, which lets you repeat those words over and over again in your head. You know, like when you're trying to remember a phone number? That's the phonological loop in action.
Okay, our third component is the Visuo-Spatial Sketchpad. You can just call it your inner eye. This part handles everything visual, what things look like, and where they are in relation to each other. It's what you're using when you try to figure out the fastest route home in your head, or imagine rearranging the furniture in your room. It's also split into two: the visual cache for stuff like color and form, and the inner scribe for all the spatial and movement info.
And the final piece of this puzzle is the episodic buffer. Now, this was a later addition. Baddeley actually added it in the year 2000. Why? Because he realized there needed to be a way for all these different parts to communicate with each other and, crucially, to connect to our long-term memory. So the episodic buffer is like the glue. It pulls all the visual, spatial, and sound information together into a one single complex memory or episode.
So, that's the model in a nutshell. But hey, a theory is only as good as the proof that backs it up, right? So now, let's get into the really good stuff, the evidence. Looking at the research is absolutely key for evaluating the model's strengths, which is perfect for your AO3 skills. The evidence supporting the working memory model comes from a few different places. We're going to take a quick tour through some dual-task performance studies, look at some really fascinating clinical cases, talk about a neat little phenomenon called the word length effect, and then check out what modern brain scans can tell us.
Okay, so Baddeley and Hitch's own dual task studies are some of the best evidence we've got. They found that when people tried to do 2 visual tasks at the same time, they really struggled because both tasks were fighting over the same resource, the Visuo-Spatial Sketchpad. But if they tried 1 visual task and 1 verbal task, it was much, much easier. This is super strong evidence that these systems are separate and have their own limited capacity.
The clinical evidence is also incredibly powerful. Take the classic case of patient KF, who was studied by Schalise and Warrington. After a motorcycle accident, KF's memory for things he heard, his auditory memory, was awful, but his memory for things he saw? Totally fine. This kind of dissociation strongly suggests that the phonological loop and the Visuo-Spatial Sketchpad are actually physically separate systems in the brain.
Then there's something called the word length effect. You can even try this yourself. It's way easier to remember a list of short words like cat, sun, map than a list of long words like association, university, hippopotamus. And why is that? It's because the phonological loop doesn't hold a number of items, it holds about 2 seconds worth of speech. You can just say more short words in 2 seconds than long ones.
And finally, modern science totally backs this up. Brain scans, like PET scans, literally show us the different parts of the brain light up when we're doing verbal tasks compared to when we're doing visual tasks. For example, tasks using that phonological loop show activity in the brain's left hemisphere, while spatial tasks get the right hemisphere buzzing. This gives us a clear biological basis for the whole model.
Okay, we've described the model and we've looked at the evidence. So now it's time for the final verdict. Let's really dig in and weigh up the pros and cons to build a solid critical understanding of this theory.
So the model's strengths are pretty clear, right? It's got loads of solid evidence behind it, it does a way better job of explaining multitasking than the old models, and it has some really practical applications. But, and here's its biggest weakness, that central executive, psychologists argue it's just too vague. It's basically described as attention, without explaining how it actually works. It's the most important part of the model, and also the one we understand the least.
So why does all this matter in the real world? This is where we get into application, or AO2. Well, the model has huge practical value. For instance, it helps us understand that a lot of reading difficulties might actually be linked to problems with the phonological loop. It also gives us a framework for understanding attention issues in conditions like ADHD, which could be tied to problems with that central executive.
Phew, we have covered a ton of ground. So, to wrap this all up, let's boil it down to the absolute key takeaways you'll need to really master this topic for your revision.
So if you remember anything, remember these things. First, the working memory model kicked the simple single-store idea of short-term memory to the curb. Second, it's an active, multi-part workbench. Third, it's backed up by tons of evidence from lab studies to brain scans. And finally, if you want a top-tier evaluation point for your essays, always critique the vague, fuzzy nature of the central executive. I really hope this explainer has made the working memory model crystal clear for you. And if you're looking to go even deeper and really ace your psychology I-levels, Psychology Success Tutoring offers personalized one-to-one and small group sessions to help you smash your goals. Just get in touch using the email on screen to find out more. Thanks so much for joining me.